Alrighty, welcome to today's workshop on the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan. The Safe Drinking Water Plan is a report that is provided to the state legislation once every 5 years. Today's workshop will begin with a presentation by drinking water staff, summarizing the history of the Safe Drinking Water Plan, some updates since the 2015 Safe Drinking Water Plan, and an overview of the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan. Following the presentation and a short break, we will begin receiving your public comments. We ask that comments be kept to no more than 3 minutes in length to help ensure that everyone interested in commenting is afforded that opportunity. Please understand that today's public workshop is an opportunity for you, the public, to provide comments on the topic of the Safe Drinking Water Plan draft. If you do not wish to provide your comments orally, you may also submit written comments today, or if you haven't already, you may submit your written comments following the instructions provided in the notice of public workshop. I want to let you know that this meeting is being webcasted and recorded, so please speak clearly. In order to comply with public gathering limitations and physical distancing requirements, and as authorized by the governor's executive orders to address COVID-19 emergency, there is no physical meeting room. For people who only want to listen or watch the meeting, staff has set up a webcast channel on the Water Board's public meeting live webcast page for a live webcasting of this workshop. If you missed today's workshop, a recording of the webcast will be available on our website. We'll be receiving public comment through a Zoom meeting platform for today's workshop. If you intend to present or comment or think you might be interested in commenting, you should already be in the Zoom meeting room using the meeting ID provided on the board's website and the password you received. If you've not already received the password, you can email DDW staff now at ddw-techops, that is techops@waterboards.ca.gov. Include speaker comment in the subject line so our staff can follow up with you. For those in the Zoom meeting, you will be on mute and your camera turned off until it is your turn to speak. Our staff will then unmute you and ask you to turn on your camera if you have one. When you are done speaking, you'll be placed on mute and your camera turned off. You may choose to exit the Zoom meeting or remain logged into the Zoom for the remainder of the meeting. You can also join us via webcast. Ashley, would you like me to share?
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're going to get started. Can you guys put up the first slide of the presentation, please? So hang tight, everybody. We're getting there. We're getting to the first page here. Okay, here we go. There it is. All right, so thank you for joining us today for this workshop on the Safe Drinking Water Plan. Now, if you thought you were logging into the Mesa College Algebra 101 Zoom class, well, you're on the wrong call. My name is Randy Barnard. I'm the chief of the Division of Drinking Water's Technical Operations Section. The Safe Drinking Water Plan is a unique opportunity. As you'll hear, the impetus for the Safe Drinking Water Plan is established in statute by the state legislature. Now, I say it's a unique opportunity for a couple of reasons. First, the promise of the Safe Drinking Water Act has not been fully met in California. The vast majority of us are fortunate to have safe and reliable drinking water at all times provided by capable public water systems. Still, too many communities have had serious ongoing drinking water quality problems, including violations of primary drinking water standards for many years. These problems are well documented and actions are underway to correct them. But what else can we do, collectively speaking, to meet the promise of the Safe Drinking Water Act? That's what this plan is all about, and that's where this plan comes in. Now, the second reason why I say this is a unique opportunity is that the legislature has directed us in statute to provide a set of recommendations to improve drinking water quality. These include recommending legislative actions, program actions by the State Water Board, and actions by public water systems. Now, this is the third version of the Safe Drinking Water Plan. There was the original 1993 version. There was then a 2015 version, and now this 2020 version. We are right now in the public comment period for the current version. Next slide, please. The purpose of this workshop is to provide background on our current plan, review what we've done since the last plan, give you an overview of this new plan, and invite you, the public, to comment on what we're recommending. You can do this in writing by sending us an email, or if you just want to say your comment, you can do that at the end of our presentation. Now, as Allison was saying, if you have not already done so and you'd like to make a verbal public comment, you need to be signed up into our Zoom meeting. You just request the password following the instructions included on the notice for this public workshop. And we'll be showing you another link to that later on if you need it. Next slide, please. With me here today, I have two of our staff who have been leading the development of this plan, Mark Bartson and Ashley Doomer. Mark was involved with the preparation of previous versions of the plan, both in the early 1990s and in 2015. And he was the lead on the early discussions and drafting of this current plan. Ashley has led the finalizing of the plan and will do the review of all the public comments that we receive. She'll also be preparing the staff report to the State Water Board later this summer. Next slide, please. So what we're going to talk to you about today is an introduction, which I just did. I'll go over the schedule, and then Mark will walk you through the history of the plan. Ashley will then explain the new draft plan and what we have included in there. After that, I'm sure we're all going to be ready for a quick break. So we'll take a break, and then we'll come back to hear comments and answer any questions that you may have. Next slide, please. So here's our current schedule. Now, the key milestones are this. Public comment closes on April 23rd. We'll be considering all the comments we receive as we finalize the plan, and we'll provide those to the State Water Board members. We have a target date of August 3rd for a presentation at the State Water Board in one of their board meetings. And then in August, we plan to submit the final report to the legislature. Next slide, please. So what's the purpose of the Safe Drinking Water Plan anyway? Well, broadly speaking, it assesses California's drinking water quality, and it looks at specific problems and health risks to the public. And most importantly, it gives us an opportunity to make our best case for specific recommendations to improve drinking water quality for everyone. Next slide, please. Now, more specifically, the purpose of the plan can be summed up by the following quotes that I've taken right out of the plan itself. And that is, since the establishment of the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act in 1974, there have been major improvements to the quality of drinking water for the vast majority of communities served by public water systems. However, for many communities, the promise of safe drinking water has not been met. In many cases, safe drinking water has not been available for multiple years. This report provides a timely and unique opportunity to chart the overall course towards providing safe drinking water to all communities in California. And with that, I'd like to hand this over to Mark, who will walk you guys through some of the history of this plan.
Thank you, Randy. My name is Mark Bartson. As Randy mentioned, I have been involved in the previous versions of the plan. Specifically, 6 years ago in 2015, I was involved with the development of the plan and the public meetings that we held for that plan. One of the things we've reflected on a little bit in doing the meetings in this format is how much we miss the comments we received from people as we talk to them after the meeting or at the break. And we want to make sure that opportunity is not lost by inviting all of you to ask whatever questions, send in any comments you have, talk to our folks about the plan. We really enjoy that feedback. As Randy mentioned, the first Safe Drinking Water Plan was published in 1993. Following that in 2015, shortly after our transition, the transition of the California Drinking Water Program to the State Water Board, we published the 2015 Safe Drinking Water Plan, which was the first plan under the State Water Board. That plan, of course, included an implementation plan, which we will talk about a little bit later. In 2019, with Assembly Bill 2501, a couple of additional topics were added for inclusion in the plan. Now, early in 2021, we released the draft plan for public comment. And looking forward, we have the 2025 next version of the plan ahead, which we'll talk about a little bit. Next slide. I want to give you an overview of the plan contents pursuant to statute. There's 12 specific topics specified in statute for inclusion. This includes the two new topics, administrators and consolidation. As Randy mentioned, there's a requirement to include recommendations for action by the legislature, the State Water Board, and public water systems to improve drinking water quality. And it addresses public water systems serving fewer than 10,000 service connections. Next slide. What are public water systems? Well, the vast majority of us get almost all of our water from public water systems. However, there is a specific definition of public water systems that we'll cover here. First of all, there's community water systems where we live, serving residential areas such as cities, towns, mobile home parks with an independent water supply. Then there's the non-transient, non-community water systems, which serve the same people daily for at least 6 months per year, such as schools and businesses with 25 or more employees. These water systems, the people served by these water systems are drinking that same supply much of the time on a daily basis. And then finally, the third category is the transient non-community water systems, which serve a varying population, transient, in non-residential settings for a minimum of 60 days per year, 25 or more people. This includes restaurants, campgrounds with their own water system, places of business, and so on. Next slide. For additional context of this public water system statistics, how many of these are there statewide? First of all, of the community water systems, there's just under 3,000. The non-transient, non-community, again, the schools, businesses, and so on with their own water supply, around 1,500. And the transient non-community, just under 3,000, for a total of almost 7,400 public water systems. Next slide. Again, the 12 elements of the plan, we'll go through those specifically, and then we'll follow up in detail on a couple of the new elements. So the first 6 elements, first of all, there's an assessment of the overall quality of California's drinking water and specific water quality problems. Second is the type and level of contaminants and the estimated cost to meet primary standards and public health goals. A discussion and analysis of the known potential health risks. Number 4, an evaluation of how to improve existing water quality information systems to be more effectively used. This is a very important element and major theme of this plan. We have a chapter developed dedicated to that. Content element number 5 is an evaluation of research for screening and detection of waterborne chemicals. 6 is an analysis of the technical and economic viability and health benefits of various treatment techniques. Next slide. 7 is alternatives for financing construction, installation, and operation of new treatment technologies, looking at the financial side of things, how are facilities paid for. Sources of revenue available to public water systems to meet current and future expenses. Current cost of drinking water paid by residential, business, and industrial consumers. 10, an important one, recommendations to improve the quality of drinking water with a 5-year implementation plan. And 11 and 12, the new plan elements. Review of the use of administrators to achieve access to safe drinking water, and review of the use of consolidations to achieve access to safe drinking water. Next slide. These 2 new elements, consolidation and administrators, are foundational to our overall regulatory program, and specifically to our safe and affordable drinking water program. We have a webpage dedicated to these. I encourage you to visit it here. Here's the link to it. Next slide. On that web page related to consolidations, you can get the current information, as this is definitely a work in progress. Both of these topics are covered in this report, Consolidations and Administrators. And there'll be ongoing information on both of these as we move through the elements of the SAFER program over the next several years. Certainly, there'll be much more to say on these in the next version of the Safe Drinking Water Plan. Next slide. Administrators, the appointment of administrators under specific circumstances is a new power given to us under the Health and Safety Code, Section 116686, as of September 2018. The State Water Board has new authority to order the appointment of administrator to certain public water systems after making findings that are required and completes the required public notification process. That statute established specific criteria in which an administrator could be appointed to address safe drinking water. Next slide. Would like to touch upon a few of the milestones since the 2015 Safe Drinking Water Plan. The Human Right to Water resolution adopted by the State Water Board, following up to the legislative action in 2012 to establish the human right to water in California, was the official adoption of the State Water Board of the human right to water, which is now woven into everything we do. In 2017 was one of the first major milestones of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which established that milestone established medium and high priority groundwater sustainability agencies. The importance of that is discussed in the report. In 2017, we had the adoption of a maximum contaminant level for 123 TCP. In 2018, the establishment of mandatory consolidation authority pursuant to Senate Bill 1263. In 2019, there was several initiatives, including the permanent DOU regulations, the establishment of the SAFER program, SB 200, more on that in a moment. Completed lead sampling of K-12 schools pursuant to Assembly Bill 746. Also, the adoption of the Administrator Policy Handbook by the State Water Board. In 2020, there was a few other milestones we'd like to mention here. There was a DWR report on small water system drought and water shortage vulnerability, an important tool available to us now. And in 2020, the initial SAFER funding expenditure plan, along with the release of the water resilience portfolio. Next slide. I do want to touch upon a couple of elements from this list in a little more detail. First of all, the Safe and Affordable Financing for Equity and Resilience program, known as the SAFER program. It's a set of tools, funding sources, and regulatory authorities designed to meet the goals of safe, accessible, and affordable drinking water for all Californians. It includes a robust set of reporting requirements and a very high level of transparency, essentially a 10-year program. The purpose is safe drinking water for in every California community for every Californian. It includes the initial funding expenditure plan and policy, identifying at-risk public water systems, state small systems, and domestic wells. This third element, the state small systems and domestic wells, are technically not classified as public water systems, but the SAFER program recognizes that a lot of people get their water at home and elsewhere from these water sources, and these are very important also, need attention. Finally, the website's available. Next slide. I mentioned the water resilience portfolio, which was pursuant to an executive order by Governor Newsom in April 2019. Upon adoption of that executive order, Governor Newsom mentioned that to meet these challenges, the challenges of water and all aspects of water in California, we need to harness the best in science, engineering, and innovation to prepare for what's ahead and ensure long-term water resilience and ecosystem health. We need an all of the above approach to get there. Next slide. Some of the challenges of the water portfolio, at the very top of the list, unsafe drinking water. It's also, of course, major flood risk, depleted groundwater aquifers, uncertain water supplies, native fish populations threatened with extinction. All of the above, all interrelated. Next slide. In July of 2020, the water resilience portfolio was adopted. To develop the portfolio, state agencies conducted an inventory and assessment of key aspects of California water, brought input from tribes, agencies, individuals, groups, and leaders across the state. They include 20 public listening sessions and more than 100 comment letters. At the top of the list of priorities identified were implementing the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Act of 2019, supporting local communities to successfully implement the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014, and so on. Drinking water at the top of the list. Next slide. I do want to go over some of the recommendations from the 2015 plan, just to give you a sense of what we covered then and some of the success we've seen and some of the works in progress. So we did a review here, went back through as part of the current plan, looked at the recommendations for the 2015 plan, and reported out on some of them. The 2015 plan included recommendations related to drinking water in these areas: drought, affordable, safe drinking water for disadvantaged communities, shared solutions, capacity development, program funding, program action week and day, transparency and information management, data systems, treatment and analytical methods, and finally, emergency preparedness and response. Next slide. At this point, I'll go through a few of those recommendations to give you a sense of how they went. First, affordable, safe drinking water for disadvantaged communities. The recommendation was that funding should be provided for infrastructure improvements to public water systems, particularly small public water systems serving disadvantaged communities. The current status of this is it's a work in progress. With the establishment of the SAFER program and the associated initiatives, significant progress has been made in this area. Progress and associated reporting will continue under the SAFER program. Next slide. The idea of shared solutions, specifically consolidations, partnerships, and now administrators. The recommendation at the time was the State Water Board will continue to promote consolidation of small water systems wherever feasible and appropriate. Consolidation is not limited to full or physical consolidation of drinking water treatment and delivery systems. It may include technical, managerial, and financial or physical arrangements between water systems. Current status, progress has been made clearly, including progress under the authorities and resources that have been put in place by the legislature since the 2015 plan. This continues to be a major priority with associated reporting and transparency, and it's fundamental to more sustainable solutions. Next slide. Treatment and analytical methods, again from the 2015 plan. The State Water Board recommended enactment of legislation to allow expanded use of point of use and point of entry treatment by public water systems. Current status, the legislation was passed and the regulations are in place. And this allows for a limited period the permitting of point of use and point of entry treatment for small systems with less than 200 service connections for compliance with certain drinking water standards. With these regulations in place, some small water systems, including schools and businesses, have installed point of use treatment, often as an interim but important part of a long-term solution. Next slide. Emergency preparedness and response. As part of the sanitary survey program, or water system inspection program, the State Water Board will encourage all public water systems to update their emergency response plan at least every 5 years. Status of this, progress has been made, but more work ahead. What we laid out here was essentially a voluntary plan. And what we've brought up in the report is whether this element, emergency preparedness, and specifically an emergency response plan, should be mandatory for every public water system. Next slide. Infrastructure condition. Again, from the 2015 report, the State Water Board will continue to encourage community water systems to adopt an asset management plan for infrastructure replacement as part of the rate setting process. Current status, progress, but more attention needed. Again, is this better? Would this be better? Would we be better served to make this a mandatory element rather than something we encourage and not all water systems do? This is discussed in more detail in the 2020 plan. Next slide. So finally, with that recap, I want to turn our focus to the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan. All Californians have a right to safe and clean drinking water, clearly. This plan includes our opportunity for recommendations for action by the legislature, ourselves, the State Water Board, and public water systems to improve water quality. With that, I'll pass the baton to Ashley to go over the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. As Randy mentioned earlier, I am responsible for getting this plan completed. But unlike Mark, this is the first safe drinking water plan that I've had the opportunity to be involved with. Today, I will be covering what's in the 2020 Safe Drinking Water Plan. I will provide a brief overview of each of the 12 chapters, assuming that you haven't had the opportunity to read the entire 225-page document. Then I will discuss some of our draft recommendations and some of the major themes that were identified. I'll wrap it up by reminding you how to provide public comments on the plan. To begin here, I have a sneak preview of 4 strong themes that organized from our work. These themes were used to organize our recommendations, and we used them throughout. Those 4 themes are emergency preparedness, sustainability, equity and the human right to water, and program actions. These themes definitely have some overlap with each other. Central to the theme is the reality that safe, clean, and affordable water is essential for healthy communities. Collectively, we work hard to make this a reality, but we recognize we still have more work ahead of us to make this a reality for everyone. Chapter 1 introduces the Safe Drinking Water Plan. It provides background information and describes the purpose of the plan. It also highlights some of the major legislative changes that have been made since the previous plan. Chapter 1 is intended to frame the issue and provide an overall perspective. As an introduction, it does not contain any recommendations. Chapter 2, we provide insight into the roles, responsibilities, and resources of the various agencies and parties involved. We also discuss the new ability in regards to consolidation and appointing administrators, which are now tools available to the Division of Drinking Water. We discuss various organizational structures of public water systems, including ownership type, such as public agencies, private ownership, and mutual water companies. We also include examples of these different types. This chapter provides background on the drinking water regulatory program carried out by the Division of Drinking Water. Under the Safe Drinking Water Act, the primary responsibility for compliance belongs to each public water system under the authority of their drinking water supply permit. It is important that we acknowledge the effort of these public water systems in meeting this responsibility. It is because of this effort that most of us have access to safe drinking water that consistently meets standards. The question is, how do we close the remaining gap for the communities that don't have access to safe drinking water? You may be aware that California depends on a combination of water sources to meet our needs. These sources don't just include groundwater and surface water, but in Chapter 3, we also discuss alternative water supplies such as ocean desalination and recycled water. These various sources are at risk from differing threats. We go into detail about these possible threats. Some examples of threats include the well-known threat of nitrate in agricultural areas from fertilization application, and 2, the emergent threat of PFAS compounds, which are currently under investigation statewide. This chapter contains a number of recommendations as we realize how important the quality of drinking water is. While 98% of customers served by public water systems receive water that meets standards, there are systems that violate these standards. In Chapter 4, we detail the violations that occurred between 2015 to 2019. We assess geographically where the violations were occurring and evaluate the impact on public water system size in their ability to comply with our various drinking water standards. Much of this discussion comes from the annual compliance reports prepared by the State Water Board each year. Chapter 5 really dives into our data systems that the Division of Drinking Water staff are using. It introduces the new data collection systems that are being worked on. It addresses specific gaps in our current data, such as not having detailed information on state small water systems. This chapter also details our efforts to make data available to others, providing greater transparency. Strong data systems are central to carrying out the mandates of the Safe Drinking Water Act. Timely, accurate, and complete information is needed by public water systems, regulatory agencies, and the public for various purposes. We are working on a number of ways to improve our data systems. Therefore, it is not a surprise that we have a number of recommendations in this area. Chapter 6 explains the analytical methods used to evaluate the quality of the water samples. This chapter does provide all of the federal and state standards. So if you've ever wanted to know the difference between what's in the EPA regulations versus the State Water Board, you can quickly reference this chapter. This chapter also talks about the unregulated chemical monitoring that is performed and examines improvements needed to existing methods. It also looks at new methods to better inform customers of their water quality. This information is really helpful when we look at evaluating if we can lower our maximum contaminants levels or to be able to detect new chemicals such as microplastics. In our previous chapters, we discussed the contaminants that water systems may have. In Chapter 7, we discussed the various treatment technologies used to remove these various contaminants. We also discussed the cost of compliance with 123 TCP, as it was the only maximum contaminant level that was added since the 2015 Safe Drinking Water Plan. And Chapter 8 is our brand new exciting chapter, made possible with the addition of our new SAFER unit. This chapter covers possible reasons water systems are failing, looks at possible indicators of systems that are likely to fail our standards, and evaluates what can be done when water systems fail. Much of this discussion is based on the work of staff in our SAFER unit that they've accomplished in the last year or so. A huge component of sustainability of a public water system is their ability to have adequate technical, managerial, and financial capacity. This chapter highlights the need for water partnerships and discusses some of our early lessons learned with new tools for consolidation and appointing administrators. I really encourage you to read this chapter as it details so many new aspects of our program. As the SAFER unit has really just begun their work, there's quite a few recommendations in this chapter as well. Chapter 9 evaluates impacts to cost. One example of cost is the source of supply a water system utilizes, and this can vary significantly. It details water system sources of revenue and impacts to these revenue. Talks about increased focus on the issue of affordability. Consistent with the human right to water and recent legislative authorities such as Assembly Bill 401 and the SAFER program, the State Water Board continues to focus on affordability. The AB 401 report evaluates water rates and affordability for customers of public water systems to assure the access to safe drinking water. In addition, the SAFER program has developed additional methodologies and approaches to evaluate and consider affordability in the development of sustainable solutions. Chapter 10 details the various funding of programs available, specifically detailing all of the State Water Board funding programs available to drinking water systems. It also discusses the different financing methods available to water systems. Water systems need funds for capital improvements. New or upgraded facilities may be necessary to meet regulatory requirements. In addition, aging water system infrastructure beyond the end of its useful life must be replaced. In addition to upfront capital cost, water systems need to consider ongoing operations and maintenance costs. This is critical for a project to be successful in the long run. For example, a water system may secure the funds necessary to install a water treatment facility. However, without the funds to cover the ongoing operations and maintenance, the facility will be unlikely to continue to provide safe drinking water. Chapter 11 discusses the various threats to drinking water systems and lessons learned from the various emergencies and disasters over the last several years. For example, last year, over 4 million acres of California burned. Wildfires are not the only threat to California. And we know these threats are inevitable, and it's important to evaluate previous emergency response and determine how to prepare for when these emergencies do occur. These disasters have included unthinkable damage to several communities, including the loss of life and severe property damage. Public water system facilities are critical in both responding to emergencies and the recovering after that follow. This chapter has quite a few recommendations. Given the need for emergency preparedness, we have a lot of work to do in this area. Chapter 12 summarizes all the various recommendations. There's a relatively large number of recommendations in the 2020 plan. There's a total of 66. And as I mentioned earlier, 4 themes emerged with the development of the Safe Drinking Water Plan. And we organized our recommendations around these 4 themes. Please take a look at this graphic. At the center of all this work is the goal of healthy communities. There are, of course, many components to having healthy communities, but access to safe and affordable drinking water is necessary. The 4 main themes are emergency preparedness, sustainability, equity, and the human right to water, and program action. We worked with our graphics group to put this image together. We like that the pieces of the circle blended together, as this conveys that the themes are interconnected. In fact, many of the recommendations are relevant to more than one thing. For example, a public water system without adequate technical, managerial, and financial capacity is less likely to be able to meet all the statutory and regulatory requirements across a range of operating conditions. They're less likely to be able to return to compliance after a violation and are less likely to be prepared to deal with and recover from an emergency. This then requires program action. I will go through each of the 4 themes and at least one recommendation from each. Starting with emergency preparedness. Large emergencies and disasters over the last several years bring this thematic area to the forefront. Unfortunately, with climate change impacts, water systems are more likely to experience emergency events. Under the theme of emergency preparedness, the plan discusses most common emergencies that we have experienced, such as wildfires, droughts, earthquakes, and flooding, and looks at ways to be more prepared for these emergencies and increase resiliency. One of our recommendations is that all community water systems should be required to participate via membership in mutual aid organizations with other water utilities. It is critical that water systems participate in mutual aid organizations so that when emergency takes place, the water system can more quickly address the issue. Another recommendation is focused on developing programs to ensure California water systems are planning and preparing for the impacts of climate change. As we know that California drinking water systems are at risk from various threats, it is important that the water systems prepare for these events. This is more critical with the impacts of climate change. We provide specific examples of what systems can do to help prepare for these emergencies. The second major theme is sustainability. For public water systems, the term sustainability refers both to the general concept and specific elements, including technical, managerial, and financial capacity. Chapter 8 explores this topic in detail. Key elements of these recommendations include an ever-increasing emphasis on the opportunity for consolidation, developing asset management plans, ensuring sufficient revenues, and the need for water systems to further evaluate the adequacy of their sources, both in quantity and quality. One recommendation from the sustainability is the State Water Board will continue to encourage vulnerable water systems, particularly those that rely on a single groundwater source, to study and improve their reliability. Water systems with a single source are at risk. We have seen this time and time again, from recent public safety power shutoffs to equipment failure to drought. And when a water system only has one source, they are at higher risk of not being able to continuously provide drinking water. These systems should look for an alternative source to help alleviate this risk. Another sustainability recommendation would require easily accessible and publicly available information regarding technical, managerial, and financial status for all public water systems. As discussed in Chapter 8, technical, managerial, and financial capacity of water systems is an important factor in whether a water system can meet all the requirements. Having this information available to the public increases transparency and provides valuable information to the customers of these water systems. Our third theme is equity and the human right to water. The work of trying to ensure equity and the human right to water is currently underway. Much of this work is being conducted by our new SAFER program, which is specifically targeting disadvantaged communities with ongoing water quality violations and problems. The SAFER program includes robust reporting and transparency that provides a foundation for achieving these recommendations. Within this thematic area, there are recommendations related to several ongoing initiatives to explore, analyze, develop related to the issue of affordability. One of the equity human right to water recommendations is to investigate ways to expedite funding for consolidation projects. For systems that want to consolidate and are going through a state water board funding process, it is important that the process be done as quickly as possible in order to provide the customers with safe, clean, and affordable drinking water. Therefore, it is critical to get these systems through the funding process as quick as possible. Many small water systems have water rates that are too low, and some still have flat rates. Each public water system should be required to analyze the adequacy of their rate structure and conduct an asset management plan. In order for water systems to ensure that their water rates are sufficient to cover their expenses, the water system needs to understand what their costs are. Too often, we see small water systems deferring needed system improvements, which result in more costly emergency repairs down the road. Therefore, it is important for water systems to understand their expenses and evaluate if their rate structure covers their cost. The fourth major theme is program action. This refers to the State Water Board being responsible for meeting and delivering the promise of the Safe Drinking Water Act. However, we cannot do this work alone. And this theme has a focus on collaboration with other state, federal agencies, public water systems, stakeholders, interested parties, and the public to identify desirable outcomes in achieving common goals. These recommendations are founded on an overall collaborative approach to meet the promise of safe drinking water for all communities. The State Water Board will coordinate with local county, city planning departments, local agency formation commissions, and local environmental health jurisdictions to identify areas at higher risk of contamination, areas without safe drinking water, and areas where safe drinking water has not been demonstrated. This recommendation really highlights the need to coordinate with various agencies when evaluating if new water systems should be permitted. Improved coordination and information will improve outcomes and reduce the formation of non-viable public water systems in the future. In the last several slides, I've given you a few highlights from the Safe Drinking Water Plan. We ask for your review and your thoughts on our draft. You will note that many of the recommendations emphasize on the need to continue and bolster the work that is underway, such as improved coordination across various agencies and the development of improved data and information systems. As a reminder, we are doing our last public workshop today, although we are accepting public comments through Friday, April 23rd at noon. As Randy mentioned earlier, this is a really unique opportunity to provide feedback, and I really encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. If you are interested in continuing to follow the progress of the Safe Drinking Water Plan, you can visit the State Water Board's website on the Safe Drinking Water Plan. And for those interested in providing written comment, I've included the 4 methods to go about submitting your comments. Again, we encourage you to sign into the Zoom meeting if you have not already done so. And you can do this by registering for the Zoom meeting using the Zoom meeting ID 979-8082-4702. And with that, we will take a short break and get set up to answer your questions, comments, and suggestions. It looks like it is 2:18 right now, so we'll take a 12-minute break and come back at 2:30
All right, welcome back. So it doesn't look like we have any other comments, but remember that we are still accepting comments and you can send them to ddw-techops@waterboards.ca.gov. Thank you all for attending this workshop today, and I hope you all have a great day.